Hello, welcome back. My name is Lanai, and in today's video, I am going to be talking through Edexcel Paper 2, which is a non-fiction paper, meaning you're going to encounter some persuasive techniques in the text that you read, and you'll also be expected to use persuasive techniques in the writing question. This paper consists of a total of 7 questions for section A, with the 7th question being split into A and B, 7A and B. And then for section B, you have a choice of question 8 or 9. You pick one of them, and that question is worth 40 marks. You will have to read 2 texts for this question. So for the first text, you spend 10 minutes reading that, and then you answer question 1, 2, and 3 based on text 1. And in terms of timings, you allocate 1 minute to each mark. So if a question is worth 1 mark, you spend 1 minute on it, 2 marks, 2 minutes, 15 marks, 15 minutes, etc., etc. This is only for section A. It doesn't apply in the same way in section B, because for section B, you have 45 minutes for a 40-mark question. So that 1 minute per mark formula only applies to section A. So once you've answered question 1, 2, and 3, you read text 2, also for 10 minutes, and then you answer question 4, 5, 6 based on text 2. When you get to question 7A and B, you use both texts to answer those questions, because as we will go through them in more detail later in the video, you have to compare. Right, so for question 1, pay attention to the lines. So the example on the screen is asking you to focus on lines 3 to 5. You do not need any explanation for question 1 or question 2. If you use quotations, make sure they're precise. So for example, question 2 there says you may use your own words or quotations from the text. So make that if you do use quotations, they are precise. Because if you, for example, write 2 lines just to give one answer, that's not precise enough, and you will probably not get that mark. For question 3, you will need to look at the whole text, and it's worth 15 marks. Write 3 to 4 paragraphs. This question asks you to analyze how the writer uses language and structure to interest and engage the reader. So that's what you are looking out for, language and structure techniques. Persuasive techniques fall into this, so you would just add them as part of what you are looking for. So persuasive techniques include things like anecdote, opinion, facts, triples, rhetorical questions. There is a crossover with persuasive techniques and language and structure techniques, but they are a distinct set of techniques that you should be aware of for this nonfiction paper. So as I said, this is a language and structure question, so make sure you make points about both of them. If you do not make points about both language and structure techniques and explain and analyze them, you cannot get more than 6 marks. It's outlined in that screenshot from the mark scheme with the red border, so you can pause and have a read of that. Moving on from question 3, you now will be looking at text 2. And notice we're back to the shorter questions to familiarize yourself with that text. So pay attention to the lines for question 4 and 5, because you're given specific lines to look for your answers. And these are both worth 1 mark each. So no need for explanations for these questions. And again, if you use quotations, make sure that you are being specific. Question 6 is an evaluation question, and it is worth 15 marks, and it's a whole extract question. Because it's evaluation, you need to make sure you distinguish your approach to this question from the language and structure analysis question, for example, for question 3. And the way in which you do that is by using evaluative vocabulary. And an easy way to remember some of these evaluative words is the acronym SPECS, okay? So these words include successfully, powerfully, effectively, creatively, skillfully. There are a whole bunch of other words that you could use, like aptly, convincingly, many other words that I'm sure you can think of. But that's just an easy way to remember those 5, and those work really well. You are also looking out for how the writer effectively uses settings, ideas, themes, and events. It's another way to distinguish this question from the language and structure analysis question. So, for example, for this question, it's asking you how to evaluate how successfully the writer has created excitement about Newcastle and Gateshead in the extract that was given for this question. So then you can look through and look at the way the writer has used settings or ideas, themes, or the events that occur in the text, and you would then consider how the writer has been effective in doing this. In terms of where you place your opinion, in terms of thinking, is it effective or not, you should just say, yes, the writer is effective, okay? And then just focus on supporting that and supporting your evaluation. And you do that using analysis of language and structure. So as I said, the main skill is to evaluate, but you support your evaluation by also evaluating and analyze language and structure, including persuasive techniques where possible. Do not make analysis of language and structure the main thing you do for this question or the only thing. If you do that, you cannot get more than 6 marks. So remember, the skill that you're being marked on is evaluation. Show that using those SPECS words: successfully, powerfully, effectively, creatively, skillfully, amongst other words. And then you support your evaluation with analysis of language and structure. And then we move on to question 7, divided into 7A and B. For these questions, you are looking at both texts, and you need to refer to both texts in those 2 questions. So for 7A, you are focusing on similarities. This question is worth 6 marks. You look at the whole text and you simply pick 3 similarities that the texts share. You make 3 points about the similarities and you add evidence from both texts. You don't need to explain in this question, but you make your 3 points, you give your example, and then you move on to the next question. So just make sure that you have 3 similarities and a quote from each text to prove the similarity. And that's question 7A. And as you'll see, it's a bit of a warm-up to 7B. 7B is looking for you to compare. So you look at both similarities and differences. It's a bigger question. It's worth 14 marks. It's based on the whole extract again. And this time you are being asked to look at ideas and perspectives. And when considering ideas and perspectives, look at the writer's purpose, their opinions, the tone, and viewpoint. You want to show the examiner that you're answering the question specifically. So those are the things that you can consider in order to make sure that you are hitting that question and you are answering that question directly. You support your comparisons with analysis of language and structure techniques, including persuasive techniques. So you compare, again, how the writers use these to put across their ideas and perspectives. Now, for this question, you need to go back and forth in your comparison, okay? Meaning discuss a similarity or difference between the texts in one paragraph at a time. So for example, write 1 or 2 sentences about text 1 and then follow that up, comparing that with 1 or 2 sentences about text 2, okay? So go back and forth. If you only focus on one text, you will be capped at 6 marks, okay? Meaning you won't be able to get more than 6 marks on this question. So you really need to make sure that you are going back and forth with your comparison, looking at both texts and showing that balance and that comparison. And then finally, you have your writing question and you have a choice. So you either pick 8 or 9, not both, pick one. Make sure you spend about 5 minutes planning before you start the question. Do this question first so you don't run out of time. I think that is a really, really good idea because, again, if you don't have a proper ending to this question, you will miss out on a good chunk of the marks available. So I think doing this question first is definitely helpful in managing your time. Do this question first, do not go over the 45 minutes so you have time for the rest of the paper. Revise your vocabulary before the exam, okay? So even now, hopefully you're not watching this for the exam, but even if you are, 10 to 15 ambitious words. So these are words that you can pick, you can check them. You can check them on Google, you can ask your teacher. A good list of 10 to 15 ambitious words that will demonstrate that ability. And you want to make sure you know what they mean, know how to use them, and importantly, know how to spell them. In fact, I've got a video on this, so I will link it actually in the description. Plan your structure techniques as well. So think about whether you're going to use a cyclical structure or using one sentence paragraphs. They are really, really, they can be really, really powerful in a persuasive text. Use the appropriate layout, for example, headlines for articles, and make sure you know the difference between the layout of nonfiction text, like how you may lay out a letter is definitely different to how you might lay out an article. Make sure you use connectives because, again, this is a persuasive text. You're likely going to be making some sort of argument in what you are saying. Using connectives is a really good way of showing that cohesion and linking your ideas together in a sophisticated way. Use persuasive techniques throughout. So you will be familiar with use of language and structure techniques, for example, in your narrative writing. But this piece of text, again, the persuasive techniques are what distinguish this, are part of what distinguishes non-fiction writing from fiction. Make sure that you leave 5 minutes at the end to read over your work and correct any mistakes. And this is a really, really positive thing that you can do to make sure you get as many marks as possible this exam, because of course SPAG is marked here. So that's it for this video, and I hope that you found it helpful. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. Please like the video, share it with somebody who might find it helpful. I'm going to leave some videos linked which have some live lessons for persuasive writing, so you can check that out to help you with some of the things that I mentioned in this section for section B. So I hope you enjoyed the video and see you on the next one.